Hi everyone, welcome back. This is not a video that I expected to be filming around this time, but I do always strive to come from an authentic place with you guys, and I think when I've used that word before, it comes a lot from my deepest reflections really about the world and how I bring those reflections into language learning and really boosting that confidence that can make such a world of difference in how we show up in our languages. And that being said, I want to make this video because obviously, I am still human, even as I love doing all this work as a language learning coach and giving you guys advice about how to learn languages better, more mindfully and holistically. I still am having so much of a struggle over here, and really with a lot of life transitions that have been going on in the past month, really, where I have not been making content. I haven't even really filmed a video for the last 2 months. What you guys have seen with my podcast, those I batched like well at the beginning of the summer. And so I wanted to give you an update about where I'm coming from. This video is not going to be scripted. I'm going to leave chapters with all of the topics that you're thinking I'm going to cover in this video below, so you can kind of skip around. But I am a bit burned out and in a state of emotional confusion. So this is just how it's going to go. But I wanted to especially be honest about this update because it is going to highly impact how I'm going to address making content from now on. Obviously, this isn't goodbye, but it is a very big pivot in how I'm trying to maneuver my life and how that is really impacting how I show up for you guys online. You know, the past 3 years after hitting so many of my language milestones, I mean, living abroad in the country, learning a language to a near native level, implementing all these strategies, I mean, learning so much about myself. Like, if you are at that point in your language learning where you're like, everything is going to be better after I reach this milestone or I hit this goal, you can see me over here, and I am very much still as confused as ever. And this just serves as a reminder that I am still figuring myself out. I'm still human, and I want to be honest about it with you guys. So the last time that I filmed the language bookshelf tour video on my channel, just showing you guys what kind of language books were on my bookshelf, I thought, you know, this is a great chapter to starting something new. Like, I was bringing all of my language textbooks and transferring them to a new apartment that I thought I would stay in for at least a year, like at least until next July. And I had all of my content planned out for you guys that I wanted to deliver on. And since then, there have been so many life transitions in this past month that it's hard for me to even process right now what all of it is supposed to mean or what it is inspiring me to do. As I said, I absolutely love combining personal development with language learning and helping you guys build your confidence that way in your languages. And also, this is a really big giveaway that I have a really hard time taking my own advice. And what really sparked me wanting to make this video in the first place is when I uploaded episode 20 of, I think, podcast season 2 onto my channel a few weeks ago. And I was looking back over it, and it was about living authentically, right? What are your authentic language learning dreams? They should feel a little bit crazy. And as I was listening to the word authenticity, that's definitely, you know, one of my values that I try to abide by as I live out my life, as I learn languages. That word can mean different things to different people, but really just staying true to myself is how I interpreted that word personally, and that's how it's always been. And when I listened back to that episode, I was like, Emily, you are not living authentically to yourself at all, even though you've been trying to kid yourself into thinking you have been. Also, keeping my very personal life and my language learning and online presence a bit separated. I'm not going to go into all of the details that kind of led me to how I'm feeling now. But what I will say is that this place that I have been living in is not authentic to me. It's not conducive to language learning. I tried to really stick it out and make it work. And in the end, I just couldn't bring myself to think about giving up what has brought me so much life, so much joy, which is learning languages, and not only learning them, but interacting with them and breathing life into them, and in different ways, not only talking to different people, but being able to just experience the culture surrounding that language and experiencing the people seeing my friends that I haven't been able to see since the pandemic, or at least have only been able to see sporadically, right? Yes, that stability with staying in one place has been great. It's been fundamental for me to actually build this channel as much as I have in this past 1.5 years. And it's led to also a lot of burnout and realizing that I haven't felt like I've been living, making content and talking all about language learning, but not doing a lot of language learning. I mean, I felt like such a hypocrite for a while after I brought my awareness to that. So again, that podcast episode made me do a double take on my life, and now I have moved back closer to family, and don't really know my next steps. Probably my top priority right now is really focusing in on Spanish. And this is something that I have not been able to do, again, for about 3 years. Now, I did go to the Polyglot Gathering back this May, and I was able to focus more on language learning in general. At that point, it was great to just dive back into intensive learning for a little bit, except that was more like balancing about 8 languages and renewing them so I could actually speak them in person. Now, it's a lot more about, okay, honing in intensively on one language and seeing how I react differently to that, right? Because, it's different, as I'm sure you guys all know, with learning a language, kind of dabbling in one, moving to the other, maybe taking a huge break, a huge rest from your language learning. And that's definitely what I've been doing for the last 3 years, believe it or not. And now that I'm going back intensively into Spanish, I'm really seeing the contrast and how my inner life, my personal life, is influencing my language learning life as I go back into learning Spanish, which, by the way, has been one of my languages that has been one of the best languages that I can speak, actually. And I'm a little bit ashamed to say that. My perfectionist side is feeling ashamed to say that, again, because I'm just experiencing all of these emotions that are really hard at this point right now to experience, right? Because I do have that image of the past version of myself that was like, oh, like you were a go-getter and, you wouldn't have any trouble like ordering food in another language. You would be the first one to initiate that. You would get up and like dance. You would do all of these things and really interact with the language and the people in that language. And having been, out of practice for the last 3 years, obviously I'm going to show up different. Obviously I'm going to have, different reflections that I'm going to bring to the table that are going to influence how I see life just as a human being and also how I see my language learning. But that transition has been so incredibly hard because I know I'm evolving, and again, my perfectionist side of me is like, oh, as you continue to study Spanish, which is supposed to be one of your best languages, you totally conjugated that really simple verb wrong, or you mispronounced that word because you messed up like one letter of mispronunciation, right? Or just even thinking about those really small mistakes that you can spot after you say them when you're in a spontaneous conversation with someone else. And the thing is, I have learned about myself that in these past 3 years, I really, in my personal life, haven't felt like I had a lot of control and autonomy over where I was able to be location-wise. And this is showing up in my language learning, right? I'm now at a place where now that I have that self-awareness of wanting to be in control and knowing that I lacked it for so long, language learning feels like I'm out of control. And it doesn't feel very nice to be in that spot, even though, I know it's a mental thing. But again, that is one of the mental struggles that I am dealing with right now, feeling out of control with language learning, even though I love it. I'm so glad and grateful to have the opportunity and the privilege to be able to focus specifically on Spanish for this next month. However, I do know that loss of feeling in control when I am not speaking my native language, it makes me feel scared. I haven't processed a lot of that yet, but what I have processed is helping me just even talk about it with you guys very openly on this channel about what I'm going through. I remember even putting myself again in another situation where, there was this festival that had a ton of Spanish speakers at it. I wasn't really expecting a lot. Having been to some of the other cultural festivals in my area, I thought it wasn't going to be as authentic as it was, but everyone was speaking Spanish, and the person that I was with, like I was still speaking English. And I felt like such a fraud in that moment because I was like, man, my past self would have just spoken Spanish the entire time. I wouldn't have even had to think about English. I would have, ordered the food in Spanish and everything like that. And at the same time, it was weird for me to not want to immediately resist that discomfort that I felt when I felt really overwhelmed by all the loud noises at the festival and the Spanish speakers, and the fact that, my own thoughts were telling me, oh, Emily, like, why aren't you doing what you love to do? You know what I mean? Why aren't you using the language like you have always wanted to? Now you have the freedom. Why are you not taking advantage? And so there's just a lot of things that are going through my head as I have thought about that, and as I have sat in the overwhelm that is going back into language learning and really reconciling with some past identities that I myself have been struggling with as a language learner. What kind of language learner am I right now? How can I meet myself right now where I am? That's not something that is easily answerable by any means for anyone unless they've really sat and really reflected about it. So I'm just giving myself patience. I'm also finding at this point I need a desperate change of scenery, so I am going to Peru for about 5 weeks to just, again, change pace, change the landscape, get a certification, and also just make time for slow travel and really just understanding what it means to feel like I'm living again. That sounds really dramatic, but honestly, like, I have literally been going through the motions of life for a really long time, and there's just something about traveling and being able to not only travel but interact with other people that really grounds me, and so I have no idea where that's going to lead me, but I do know that it will help me reflect on where I really want to take this channel. Really think about how do I want to live my languages again. I have all of this opportunity and I'm just not sure how to use it yet. So also, I feel like for the past few years, I've desperately been grabbing at straws to make content for you guys sometimes. Of course, I've had really good ideas. That's mostly where some of the podcast content comes in, where I do take a lot more of a mindful personal development reflection about how to increase confidence in languages. But at the same time, I feel like all of that has been very forced because, again, I haven't been really living my languages like I thought I would have been at this point in my life. And so instead of carrying on with my usual upload schedule of 3 times a week, it's pretty intense, I have just decided to take a break for a few weeks from uploading. So you guys don't expect any videos for the upcoming weeks, and then just go back to hesitantly publishing once per week. Knowing me, I will probably try to up it again to 3 times per week. But for right now, I know that I need the mental space to focus on myself and just think about where I want to head with all of this, with life, with languages, and just tell you guys more about what I am rediscovering about myself. Now, even though I am talking about taking action and going to Peru this year, I know that as well, sometimes taking no action is technically the best action to take. And that has been why I've decided to immediately slow down, again, with making content, but again, just slowing down in my life and appreciating just some of the small moments that pop up and really ground me back into appreciating what I have in the present, which I haven't been able to do in a while. Relearning how to appreciate just the quiet moments with myself, leaning into the boredom, leaning into all of the confusion that has led me up to this point, and just being present in all of the emotions that I am feeling without resisting it. Because again, I believe that was episode 18 of season 2 of the Language Learning Wellness podcast, where I did talk about, what we resist definitely increases the suffering that we are experiencing in the moment. And so I'm just reinforcing that muscle of moving through all of the emotions, just like I encourage you guys to do, and really just try to, again, really embody what I teach you guys, because it really comes from a more grounded place when I can actually implement all of that into my own life. Another thing I know I'm working on, especially with, as I mentioned before, learning Spanish intensively again and really sitting in the emotions that come with that, I am also just meditating in the fact that multiple emotions can be present, right? I can feel overwhelmed. I can feel like I am desperately trying to take control of a situation, even though I feel like I can't. I can recognize also my bravery, even though I am frustrated with myself for not keeping up with my progress in Spanish, being frustrated about that small mistake or feeling frightened. And I can also meditate on how Spanish sounds and how I have been given this incredible gift of listening and hearing and interacting with others that I wouldn't have been able to if I had never decided to learn Spanish or any other language in the first place. Those emotions can all be there. And again, we're not defined only by one emotion, right? We're defined by so many layers of us. And I'm just trying to embody that right now as I head more into more intensive Spanish focus studying. So if you can relate to anything that I am saying today, you and we're going to get through it. I promise.